So hopefully you guys have been playing the Pacific in Battlefield 5. If you didn't know, this update has brought a few maps and some very interesting new vehicles, and in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the Type 97 tank available to the Japanese faction, with specific information on how to specialise that tank in particular. The new vehicles in the Pacific update have extensive specialisation trees. This separates them from the vehicles we've seen in the main game, as you now have 6 levels of specialisations to choose from. You won't be up against the original tanks either, you'll only be up against the new ones, either on the US or the Japanese side, which makes them fairly balanced in terms of having those additional specialisations. This has changed a few things when it comes to the loadout of your tank, and you now have more options depending on what task you want the tank to complete. Are you looking for an anti-tank variant or a pure infantry farming machine? This video will help you understand the ins and outs of that Type 97 tank, with specific statistics and information on those specialisations. The Type 97 basically has a few ways you can set it up with specialisations, and they will turn the tank into a different variant if you like, which is quite a nice addition to the game. It's also visually different, and you can change the appearance of the turret depending which tree you go down. When it comes to those specialisations, you have 6 in total, so it's really important to make sure that you start playing with the tank to get them unlocked so you can get that tank to the best stage it can be. I'm also going to put you in the direction of some videos that will help you out in the description below. There are some other people that have taken a more in-depth look at the statistics and analysed the tanks in a little more detail. It's well worth checking out if you're into that sort of stuff. So the variant that I like to run focuses on the right hand side of the specialisation tree, so let's go through some of these specialisations in a bit more detail. First of all, I'm going for the improvised scope, which gives you increased gun optic zoom magnification. It's very useful when you're defending on Iwo Jima or Pacific Storm, as you can see the attackers coming from a long way away up the beach or along the water on the first set of objectives, and then it will also help you out later on in the map, as tanking, as we know in Battlefield 5, can often mean you need to sit back, clear the objective and then push in, and having that extra magnification definitely helps. You then have the options between engine upgrade and field repair. Field repair, in my opinion, is not necessary. You want to be going for the engine upgrade to get the increased acceleration and top speed. You then have an option between armour piercing rounds or the 75mm Type 3 tank gun. I of course go for the Type 3 tank gun. This 75mm cannon is effective against armoured vehicles, has a reduced ammo capacity and slower reload time, but as I'll get into a bit later in the video, it's very strong. Then you have the choice between the 75mm Type 5 tank gun, which is again a slight upgrade, giving a higher velocity cannon with increased effectiveness against armoured vehicles, or you could maybe go for reinforced tracks. Again, I go for pure power in this stage with the 75mm Type 5. Moving down one more step, you can go for the improved loading mechanism with an increased rate of fire by 10%, or the reinforced turret ring. Both have their merits, but I prefer to go for the increased rate of fire just to put that damage down range against enemy tanks, and it will help me out. Finally, once again, you have to choose between either increased ammo capacity or a reinforced engine. Both have their merits. Reinforced engine is usually what I go for here because I like to have the option to retreat, especially when I'm not playing with a gunner or somebody to help me and repair. If I do have that, then the increased ammo capacity is always nice, considering attrition in the game and having to go back to the resupply stations to get your ammo, and that's quite annoying. So some interesting information about that 75mm cannon. We have the Type 3, and then you can upgrade that to the Type 5. In terms of bullet velocity, the Type 3 has a 500 meters per second velocity, and then the Type 5 upgrades slightly to 520. This is best in class. The 37mm has a 510 meters per second, but all the others, the 57mm and the 120mm howitzer, are slower. In terms of damage, when it comes to impact and blast radius, the Type 5 HE is really strong, 280 in total, which is by far and away the best. You do have the Type 3 coming in with 240, and then beneath that the 57mm HE with 175. The howitzer is good when it comes to blast damage, but overall that 75mm Type 5 HE is just a beast against infantry and tanks. I would say that it is the best overall, with that impact and solid blast damage, but the Type 3 is also a good option, so going down that right side, you don't have to spec into both, you can also go down the middle of the tree to make your tank a bit more sturdy. I'd also say that with this you have the slight bug with the AT rounds, as they usually should give you better impact damage if you want to take out enemy tanks. However, the 57mm AT round isn't that great, that's the one that you start with. I'd recommend moving over to this 75mm. In terms of rate of fire, how does the 75mm do? Well, the Type 5 HE has an 18 rate of fire, and the Type 3 also has an 18 rate of fire. This is beaten by the 57mm that will go from 22 to 24 rounds per minute, and then also the 120mm is much slower at 11, however you of course have that howitzer round, it's a slightly different playstyle. Overall I'd say that it's quite fair with an 18 rate of fire, not quite as good as the rounds that deal less damage, but also just enough, and you'll notice that when playing. So what about going down the left side of the specialization tree? Starting out, you get the spotting scope, which is great to call out the spotted infantry for teammates. Then you have a choice between the hull-mounted 37mm cannon for your gunner to use, or you can again go for that field repair. Obviously here I would go for the hull-mounted cannon. You can then choose between the 120mm howitzer, which is a heavy howitzer with a low velocity but high blast damage. Reduced ammo capacity and slow reload time are a few of the trade-offs you'll need to deal with. Or you can go for the AP rounds, which have a high impact damage at the expense of blast. You can then pick between a smoke, discharger or reinforced tracks. For me it's the smoke to help me cover parts of the tank as I'm getting up closer with that howitzer shell, and then it's between faster turret turning speed or a reinforced turret ring. Now here is something you have to think about. Do you want to go for more ammo on the last row? If you do, you therefore have to pick the reinforced turret ring. If you don't, I quite like being able to turn the turret more quickly, therefore you have to pick either expert damage control, which is the slower self-repair but more each time, not worth it in my opinion, or the reinforced engine, which obviously increases the durability of your engine. It's another way to set up the tank, but not as good as the right hand side in my opinion. In terms of that howitzer build, you will have a 37mm howitzer, very good at blasting enemies, but you need to be more aggressive, you need to be closer. The splash damage is pretty crazy, and it will also destroy enemy tanks with ease. Personally for me though, I stick on the right hand side. This thing is unbelievably strong on defense. It will blast the hell out of the Shermans, especially when they spawn in as default Shermans because of the bug in the game at the minute where you obviously don't spawn in the menu in your tank, you have to run up to it and therefore you don't get your specializations. The Japanese side have an edge. It's a great tank, it's really good fun at holding objectives and blasting enemy armor. Let me know what you think of this. Are you running the same specialization tree as me, or do you have something different? Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.